In the spring of 2010, a woman named Sandra came to our back door with her 3 children and a paper grocery sack. That sack held everything she had decided to keep. Her husband had worked the same coal seam as my husband Daniel, and when the mine shut, he had not told anyone how bad it had gotten. They had been sleeping in their truck for 6 weeks. She knocked on my door and asked if the children could have a hot meal. I fed them for the next 3 months. And I watched Sandra do what people in this hollow have always had to do: figure out that nobody was coming to fix it. Not the county office, not the state program, not whoever was making promises on television that November. Nobody. Sandra was going to have to build something herself, or she was going to have to leave the only place she had ever called home. That is the housing crisis nobody puts on the news. Not the one with the graphs and the interest rate charts, the one that knocks on your back door with 3 hungry kids and a paper sack. My name is Ruth Combs. My family has farmed the same hollow in Harlan County, Kentucky for 4 generations. And today I want to show you something this hollow understood before it had a proper name. A way to put a solid, insulated, livable roof over your family for less than $500. Not a tent, not a tarp stretched between trees. A structure that keeps out heat, cold, and rain, that stands on its own, that has a door with a lock. My grandmother Loretta raised 3 of her 9 children in a salvaged military surplus structure on this land before the main house was finished. What I am going to show you today is simpler than what she did, and faster, and you do not need to know how to frame a wall. You need to know how to ask the right questions. Grandmother Loretta Combs was born in 1903 in this hollow, and she never lived anywhere else. She raised 9 children on ground that had no electricity until 1958, no indoor plumbing until 1962, and no road out that was reliably passable until after that. She did not call it hardship. She called it conditions. You worked inside the conditions you were given. You did not wait for them to change. I was 6 years old when she walked me behind the barn and showed me the old structure, a half-cylinder of corrugated metal, rusted now along the base, but still standing firm. My great-grandfather Ezra had hauled it up the mountain on a mule in 1923. It had started its life as military storage. He had lined the inside with burlap stuffed with dried corn shucks and leaves, and set a cast-iron box stove on flat stones in the dirt floor. 3 children came into the world in that building, while the main house went up around them. Loretta put her hand on the old metal, still warm from the afternoon sun, and she said, "Your grandfather thought he was putting us somewhere temporary. Turned out that shed was the most permanent thing he ever built." She was not being sentimental. She was stating a fact she had observed over 60 years. What you build yourself with your own hands and what you can find often outlasts what someone else builds for you with borrowed money. Hold on to that. It matters for everything that comes next. Now here is what most people do not know and what the housing assistance system will never tell you, because there is no application form for it. There are more Americans in unstable housing right now than at any point since the 1930s. Not sleeping under an overpass, that is one end of it. The other end is quieter. People sleeping in vehicles in parking lots. Families doubling up in houses that were already too small. Women and children in situations they are afraid to name because naming them makes them real. The standard answer to all of this, apply for a program, get on a wait list, submit your documentation, check back in 90 days, assumes you have a permanent address to receive the letter, a phone that stays on, and time you do not have. Most people in that situation have none of those things. What they often do have is access to land. A family member with unused acreage. A neighbor with a back field going fallow. A rural property owner who needs help with fencing and feeding livestock and would trade use of a back corner for those services. In this hollow, that kind of arrangement is older than anyone alive. Ezra Combs made exactly that deal with a man named Hicks in 1919 when he first came to this county. If you have land access, 2 hands, and around $500, you have more than you might think. Because the United States military invented a structure during the Second World War specifically to solve this problem. A shelter that ships flat, assembles without heavy equipment, can be put up by one person with no construction background, and at military surplus auctions in a damaged condition costs about $300. It is called a Quonset hut, and what I am going to show you is what you do with one. Picture a half cylinder of corrugated steel, a tin can sliced long ways and set flat side down on the ground. That is a Quonset hut. The Navy designed them in the early 1940s because they needed shelters that could be crated and shipped to Pacific Islands and assembled by men who had never built anything before. They were produced by the hundreds of thousands. After the war, they spread across the American countryside. Barns, machine sheds, storage buildings. You have passed one on a county road somewhere and probably did not know what you were looking at. They still come up at military surplus and government auction constantly. A clean one in good condition runs $2,000 to $5,000, but a damaged one, dented roof panels, rust along the base flanges, gets priced out around $300 because no contractor wants cosmetic problems on a commercial project. The structural arches are still sound. The bolt holes still line up. The corrugated steel is still solid under the rust. That is the one you want. Now, a disassembled Quonset hut does not fit in a pickup truck. You need a flatbed. Renting one will cost you, but if you ask around, a neighbor who drives for a supply company, someone from your church with a trailer, you can often find a way for gas money and a meal. I have moved hay, timber, and salvage equipment that way my entire life in this county. The asking is never the hard part. It is just the part people are afraid to start with. The assembly is built for speed. Curved steel ribs bolt together in sequence, and the corrugated panels attach with self-tapping screws. A socket wrench set and a cordless drill are all you need to borrow. The end walls are the only custom work. You build those from plywood and 2x4s, cut to follow the arch opening, and you frame in a door and a window at the front, a second window and a ventilation opening at the rear. One person can complete the full structure in 3 weekends. One problem will hit you, and I want to name it before it surprises you. Lifting the arch ribs into position alone. Each rib weighs about 40 pounds and needs to be held overhead while you bolt it to the adjacent section. The answer is not hiring someone. The answer is rigging a simple A-frame hoist from 2x4s and a length of rope that lets you raise each rib without holding the full weight yourself. My great-grandfather used the same principle to raise the ridge beam on this farmhouse in 1924. No crane, no crew, rope, leverage, and patience. Now, here is where most people get this completely wrong, and it is the mistake that turns a working shelter into an expensive storage shed. An uninsulated metal arch in summer is a steel oven. Interior temperatures can reach 150 degrees by noon. In winter, the same steel radiates heat outward so fast that the inside drops below the outside air temperature. That is not a living space. That is a problem that costs you $300. The solution is 2 layers of insulation, done in a specific order, and the first step is the one almost nobody thinks of. The first layer goes on the outside. Buy 2 rolls of foil-faced radiant barrier material, the kind sold at home improvement stores for attic installation, and wrap the exterior of the arch, securing it with construction adhesive and wire ties. That is $45 in material. That single layer bounces solar radiation before it ever contacts the steel. Interior peak temperatures drop more than 20 degrees. The structure goes from uninhabitable to uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is something you can solve. Uninhabitable is not. The second layer goes inside. You need rigid foam board insulation, the kind that comes in 4x8 panels and gets used in commercial construction. Here is the thing about rigid foam. Active construction sites generate dumpsters full of cutoffs. When a contractor cuts a panel to fit, the scraps have no resale value and go in the waste bin. Go to 3 or 4 active sites in your county and ask the foreman whether you can take the foam scraps from their bins. 2 visits out of 3, the answer will be yes. It takes a few weekends to collect enough, but you can line the entire interior of an arch structure for free. Cut the panels with a utility knife, bend them to follow the curve, glue them in place with construction adhesive. The arch shape helps you. Unlike flat walls that leave gaps, the curve holds the panel against the adhesive while it sets. Now, here is the one purchase I will tell you not to skip under any circumstances. Buy a 50-foot roll of 6mm plastic sheeting. It costs $22 at any hardware store. Staple it to your interior framing before the foam panels go up. That vapor barrier is the difference between a home that is still sound 4 years from now and one you have to gut from the inside because condensation rotted everything in it. Warm air from cooking and breathing contacts cold steel and becomes water. Without the barrier, it drips into your foam insulation, into your mattress, into your food stores, into every piece of fabric or paper you own. Within a year, mold has worked through everything. With the barrier, the warm living air never touches the steel. Condensation cannot form. $22. Do not talk yourself out of it. Water in a rural setting comes down to 2 things: what you catch and what you haul. For catching, bolt aluminum gutter sections along the base of both sides of the arch and angle them toward 2 55-gallon food-grade plastic drums set on cinder block platforms at the rear corners. Those drums come free from food processing operations, pickle plants, vinegar bottlers, chili processors, any facility that ships liquid product in bulk barrels. They cycle them out on a regular schedule and will give them away rather than pay for disposal. A mesh screen over each opening keeps out leaves and debris. Through a decent rainy season, you can collect 400 gallons or more. Treat collected rainwater with 8 drops of plain, unscented household bleach per gallon. Let it sit for 30 minutes, and it is safe to drink. That is the same ratio the Centers for Disease Control recommends for emergency water purification in the field. For hauling, self-service water filling stations exist in most rural towns at 25 cents per gallon. 30 gallons a week costs $7.50. That is enough for drinking, cooking, and hygiene for 2 people, if you treat water the way your great-grandparents treated it, as a material with a cost, not something you run until you are done thinking. Grandmother Loretta carried every drop of water this family used until 1962 from a spring on the hillside above this house. She carried it in iron-handled buckets. She knew exactly how many buckets it took to do the wash for 11 people, how many to make a full pot of soup, how many to clean a wound without waste. She did not resent the counting. She said the counting was the point. Annual water cost on this system runs about $390, hauled, plus whatever the storms provide free. That is what many households spend on a single month's water bill they never look at twice. Now, electricity off the grid does not require a licensed contractor, a permit inspection, or a $10,000 installation. It requires salvage panels, used batteries, a charge controller, and a library computer. Solar companies pull panels from rooftop installations constantly. Hail damage, warranty replacements, system upgrades. A panel with a cracked glass face or a damaged junction box cannot be resold, but a panel producing 60% of its rated output still generates 180 watts from what was a 300-watt panel. That is more electricity than you need to run lights, charge phones, and run a fan. These panels get stacked behind warehouses and sometimes given away because commercial electronic waste disposal actually costs money. Call solar installers in your region and ask if they have damaged panels available for disposal. The word disposal opens a different conversation than free. 2 used car batteries from a salvage yard at $20 each store the charge. A $35 charge controller ordered online regulates the flow between panels and batteries so you do not overcharge them. You can learn the wiring from YouTube tutorials. Draw the diagrams on paper. Check them twice. It is not complicated wiring. It is just wiring you have not done before. That system runs LED light strips, a USB charging station, a 12-volt fan, and a radio. It will not run an air conditioner or a standard refrigerator. Know what it is for and it will serve you. Ask it to do something it cannot and it will let you down. That is not a flaw in the system. That is a mismatch between expectation and design. I am not going to tell you this replaces grid power. I am going to tell you it gives you light after dark and keeps your devices charged, and on the worst summer nights, when the desert or the hollow air sits heavy and still, that small fan is the difference between sleeping and staring at the ceiling until sunrise. When you have been sleeping in a vehicle, that is not a small thing. The bathroom question stops most off-grid projects before they start. It does not have to. A composting toilet requires 2 5-gallon buckets, a standard toilet seat sized to fit across the top, and a bag of pine shavings from any feed store. After each use, a scoop of shavings covers the waste. When the active bucket is full, you seal it, move it to a sunny outdoor spot, and rotate the second bucket into service. A sealed black bucket sitting in full sun for 60 days reaches sustained temperatures that eliminate pathogens without any chemical treatment at all. Finished compost goes on non-food landscaping. The entire annual cost of this system is about $40 in shavings. The sun does the rest for free. Cooking runs on a 2-burner propane camp stove. A 20-pound propane tank lasts about 6 weeks with regular cooking and costs around $18 to refill at a gas station in any small town. In warm months, cook outside under a shade structure built from salvaged lumber and a piece of corrugated metal. That keeps the heat out of your living space and gives you room to breathe during the half of the year you can be outside. Now let me be plain about what this is and what it is not, because I will not send you into a project with false hope. This is a transitional structure, a way to get off pavement, out of a dangerous situation, out of a vehicle, and into a space that is dry, insulated, and has a door that locks from the inside. That last part matters more than it sounds. A lockable door at the end of the worst year of your life is not nothing. The path from here is, you solve the immediate problem first. You get your children somewhere safe and warm. And from that stable position, you start saving for the next stage. A concrete slab, permanent plumbing, a real structure on the same land. You cannot plan your way forward from a truck stop parking lot. You can plan forward from a dry, insulated space on a corner of someone's back acreage. I am not going to pretend this works everywhere. It does not. Rural land access is the condition this entire system depends on, and that condition does not exist in cities. County codes in rural areas often exempt small, portable structures from permit requirements. That exemption does not carry into suburban counties. The surplus materials that make this affordable circulate through rural networks, church meal lines, food bank days, county auctions, in ways they do not circulate on a city block. This works in places where a neighbor is more likely to hand you a socket wrench than file a zoning complaint. If you are in one of those places, this is worth knowing. Now, I have to say a true word about this before we finish. There is no money in a $300 surplus structure that a family can put up in 3 weekends and live in for years. There is good money in monthly rents. There is good money in mortgage interest compounding over 30 years. There is good money in assistance programs that keep families enrolled but not independent. The system does not teach you to build because building takes you off the ledger. A family that houses itself, heats itself, and feeds itself from its own land is not a customer. It is not a case number. It is not a metric that justifies next year's budget. I spent 5 years working as a nurse in Lexington. I know what the institutions know. I know which programs are genuinely trying and which ones are mostly managing the appearance of trying. And I will tell you this plainly. Most of what passes for a housing solution in this country is designed to make you compliant. You wait in the queue they define. You do not build. That is not a conspiracy. That is just how the money flows. A system that profits from your dependency will not go out of its way to teach you not to depend on it. My grandmother Loretta did not know any of that. She only knew that the holler provided. That a woman who could build shelter from what was available, who could feed and heal her family from what grew on her own land, did not need to ask permission from anyone. She did not wait for a program. She built. That is not a lesson about politics. It is a lesson about what hands are for. So here is what I want you to do. 1. Write down whether you have land access right now or know someone who might. A family member with unused acreage. A farmer who needs help with fencing or animals and might trade use of a back corner for that work. If you do not know yet, start asking. That conversation is the first thing. 2. Search your state's military surplus listings and your county government auction site for Quonset huts. Bookmark it and check it once a month. A damaged one at the right price will come up. 3. This weekend, drive past 2 or 3 active construction sites near you. Look at the waste bins. Note what is in them. You are building inventory and relationships at the same time. 4. Price out the foil-faced radiant barrier and a roll of 6mm plastic sheeting at your local home improvement store. Write the numbers down. Those 2 purchases are the foundation of everything that makes this structure livable. 5. Call one solar installer in your area, just one, and ask if they have damaged panels they need to dispose of. Ask it exactly that way. Until then, write down one name, one person who has land and might say yes to a conversation. Tell me in the comments, what is the piece of this that feels most out of reach for you right now? Because that is where we go next. Because the women who kept this country alive through hard winters and harder years knew things we are only just beginning to remember. Don't let it die with a generation.